Hello everybody, here we are today talking about the Detroit Red Wings if they're back in the playoff mix and if Hockeytown will actually get to host playoff games for the first time in a minute. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. Being said, let's get on into it. So on December 26th, the Red Wings fired their head coach, Derek Lalonde. After a slow start to the year, they were 13-17-4 and sat 28th in the league for points percentage. They also look like they're probably going to regress by anywhere from like 10 to 20 points from what we saw last year. They had 91 points, probably wasn't going to be as dramatic as 20, but either way, it was clear the organization wanted a change. And with change, it becomes very difficult because you have to get a coach that is willing to jump into a franchise that has higher expectations when the results just aren't matching up. So they go out and they get Todd McLellan, which was obviously one of the more intriguing options here. McLellan is a very experienced head coach and is a guy that has taken the three other teams he was in charge of to the playoffs at least once. So you were wondering if he would be able to do it for a fourth time. And originally I thought they're not going to be able to do it, or Todd's not going to be able to do it in his first season with the team. But I could be wrong, and that's thanks in part to the play that they've had in his first 10 games. They recently had a 7-game win streak, and even when that was snapped, that momentum a little bit with a 6-3 loss to the San Jose Sharks, bottom two side, I thought they were really able to bounce back with a good win over the Florida Panthers here recently, 5-2 W over the defending Stanley Cup champs. The Red Wings under Lalonde maybe not have had that ability to do that, whereas with McLellan, they've got 8 wins over their past 10 games and have propelled themselves up into that playoff conversation. I mean, they might not be a lock by any means. They have 46 points in 44 games played, but they have put themselves back on track to at least be there and have that opportunity to strike if it, kind of opens up for them. And I think we can probably look at those 2 games that I talked about earlier, but I wanted to zoom out over the past 10 games and see what things might be a little bit different under, of course, Todd. And if we're looking at one thing, it is the offense. They are scoring a lot right now, and it's not like they didn't before under Derek, but underneath Todd, there's more consistency. In Lalonde's first 34 games, the team had 11 games where they scored 1 goal or were shut out. And under Todd's, leadership, they have got 2 goals in every game that they've played in at least. And that is his consistency that you need, mainly because this team doesn't have a lot of room for error or slip-ups. They might need to win those close games where it's 2-1 or they win 3-0 or whatever the case is. They need goals every night. They can't have a night where they win 7-3 and they say, well, that was fantastic, but then go out and have a couple of games where they end up just getting held off the scoreboard. That is just not going to work out for a team that is in the middle of a race with probably at least 6, 7, 8 other teams out east for those wildcard spots. So for Todd, it is clear that the offense is in a better spot, and I think one area that we can highlight here that's been consistently consistent has been the power play. The man advantage has treated them very well during this time. The Red Wings, since he took over, are first in the league for goals on the man advantage with 17. The next closest teams to them are the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Columbus Blue Jackets with 9 apiece. So basically double what all these other teams have or more. For some other times or teams that are lower in this run, they've gone 17 for 35 on the man advantage during this period, and that is good for 48.6%, which is of course nearly 50% over the course of a full season. That would be the best in the league by far. They've scored on the power play in 9 out of their past 10 games. They have scored more than 2 goals, or 2 goals or more I should say, in these 10 games on 6 occasions, scoring 3 goals or more twice. I think it might have actually just been 2 3-goal games for them on the power play, which is still incredible. So scoring more consistently and using something like the power play, which is already an advantage, and making it just an absolute cheat code for the team right now. And I think one thing that I did want to highlight as well here too was some of these players that had a rough start to the season compared to where they are now with Todd. You'll see that sometimes where players are able to have more success. A guy like Patrick Kane is a good example of this. I think that he had something like 14 points in his first 29 games played under Lalonde, where now he has got 15 points over his past 9 games with Todd. He has got 2 or multi-point nights, I should say. I got stumbled up there a little bit. So 6 multi-point nights here, and is a older player that you thought, okay, maybe this is going to be where things kind of settle down here a little bit. But instead you're saying, could we see him hit 1,500 career points? I don't think we will, but when you have a stretch like that where you are just, really going on a tear, that is incredible. Then a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko, who is still a big issue defensively for the team, has been seeing better offensive results. He had 12 points in his first something like 30 games or something like that with the leadership of Lalonde. He's got 7 over his past 10. Vladimir Tarasenko is kind of one of those interesting cases where his value is obviously not as high as it used to be. And again, I think his peak years are going to be one of those things where we really say, wow, this is a better player than people might remember him as. But if he is able to find more success underneath McLellan, that is a good thing. And then you've got somebody like Ben Chiarot, a player that maybe I've been pretty harsh on before. He's even seen good numbers at even strength during his time with Todd McLellan. And what are you seeing here? You are seeing experienced older players that maybe are a little bit past their prime that are getting value or giving value for a team with a new head coach, and that is, of course, incredible. I know, of course, Patrick Kane is definitely benefiting off of the power play. There's no doubt about that. But it's still cool to see them go out and, get a little bit of a re-energize or a surge going again for them than younger players like Mo Seider, nearly a point per game over his time. Simon Edmondson is one of those players too that really does impress. His numbers at even strength are really good. Obviously they were good even beforehand, but just wanted to give props to him. Whenever he's out there on the ice, his goalies have something like a .920 save percentage. I know that can be a little bit misleading because I think Chiarot's stats are kind of similar in that regard. But Edmondson is a player that really is just impressing in a quieter sense in his rookie year. Somebody kind of highlighted it the other day. I can't remember who it is. I'll try to see if I can find it out. But just the ability to play nearly 21 minutes a night as a younger player and to give your team a 50-50 chance at even strength for a young player like him is great and really good for the Red Wings to have a young guy like him, former top 10 pick, really thriving. So younger guys seeing success, older guys seeing success. You're seeing some of the star players that you already knew were going to be good, again, really popping off right now. No surprise, this team is doing that in thanks in part to scoring a lot of goals, but it is still cool to see. So they're going out there, they're scoring more, they're scoring consistently. The power play is insanely good. The man advantage, of course, which we've already highlighted, is probably covering up a lot of those things at 5-on-5 and even strength. But even then, they're kind of breaking even in that regard. And you go back to, again, some of these older players are finding their game again. If Patrick Kane can get going even for the course of a season, I think that'd be really good. Now, are they back in the playoff mix? I think the answer to this is pretty obvious. Yes, they are. There are only probably one or two teams out east that I'd say really aren't in the conversation right now, with Buffalo Sabres definitely being one of those teams. But the Red Wings are back, and they are, again, back to life. They are 3 points back of the Bruins, I think, for that final wildcard spot. And I think a team like Ottawa may continue to slip a little bit after they had that little short burst. Things haven't really been perfect for them. Their biggest threat right now, I'd say, probably is the Montreal Canadiens. They are 8-1-1 over the past 10, and I did a video not too long ago over Montreal talking about how for a prolonged period they've been really good. Detroit has really just seen a ton of success in the very, very short term, and I don't really know how that will play out for them. But as for the playoff mix, yes, they are there. Now, are they going to make the playoffs? That remains to be seen. They have a ton of games left to play. They are going to have to figure out how to win maybe a little bit closer games as the power play will fall off. There is no way they're going to be nearly at 50% for the course of the season, but they have talent, and they may be one of those sides that is a little bit more eager to go out there and make a move as the trade deadline approaches a little bit, and Steve Yzerman-White wants a little bit of pressure taken off of him. Now, do they have a failure of a season if they miss the playoffs? I don't think so, because we could probably break it off into the Lalonde era and then the McLellan era for the course of the season and say, what did the team look like in their first 34 games versus the rest of the year? And I think that if you go by points percentage and whatnot, people might be able to make the argument that over nearly 50 games, around 50 plus games, this team was a playoff caliber side. And that's why I think somebody like Steve would say, hey, let's use that as an example and point that and flaunt that during the offseason, as I've not really had a lot of things go my way in terms of the postseason success or just getting to the postseason that he was really striving for. So it is still very early. 10 games is nothing to really go on about here. We talked about that with, of course, Jim Montgomery, as the Blues got off to a good start with him, and they aren't even in a wild card spot yet, and they've got even more games. But I do think that, of course, he benefits from the fact that it is just kind of a free-for-all at the moment. So there's a lot of teams that'll probably fall off here in a little bit, and some other sides that I just don't really think are going to get going that much. They may be in the mix to make the playoffs, but they're not going to be as good as they've been in recent years, which has opened up things for this to kind of just expand into a nearly conference-wide race for the playoff berths at the bottom spot and the two wildcard spots. So Todd McLellan and the Red Wings are looking better. Again, a lot of things are inflated by that power play that continues to just eat teams up, and they are scoring a lot of goals at a rate that is going to be hard to match. But for right now, they are fun. they are winning, and this probably will pose as a good question as to what this Wings team will be entering the offseason, regardless of whether or not they make the playoffs. But I am hoping that it comes down to the wire, kind of like last year, maybe even to a broader extent where there's like 6 games that really matter in terms of playoff appearances and odds. It won't happen, but for right now, again, this is fun. You have got so many teams right here that we've talked about, and as we go further and further along in the season, I expect the list to shrink. But right now, it just keeps staying consistent, where you've got Pittsburgh, you've got the Rangers, the Blue Jackets, the Bruins, the Canadiens, the Red Wings. I'm probably leaving off some other teams out of all this, but again, just going back to how fun this year has been. What are your thoughts on the Red Wings so far this season? Do you think that they'll make the playoffs? Do you think that the power play will continue to be, a top-end unit? And do you think this team will be able to win even if their power play does die off significantly? Let me know down below in the comments down below. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And good luck, hockey already. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.